Hello there. How are you,
Hello.
Dave? How are you, Helen?
Oh, I'm all right.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Another writer talk.
Why not?
Yes, and it's good to have you back to record with us, Helen, because, you know.
Thank you. I also have to apologise for me not having a face right now because my camera's decided to go on the fritz. So
We can hear you, though. This is the important thing.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties are wonderful. It's the one thing I can't work out with this platform is how to give you a photo. Hopefully we can sort that out for something in the future, maybe.
Yeah. If not, I'll just get a webcam.
There's that option. We decided we were going to talk something around the theme of gaming. I think today we didn't get past that.
Well, no, I mean, we had a lot of things that we could talk about with gaming, but are they writer talk conversations is the question. Just griping or, banning over certain games.
Well, I mean, we did BioWare a while back. That was.
You did, yes.
Yes, with Dave afterwards, even though he was invited on to record it with us, sitting to one side going, no, I'd rather not. And then afterwards going, well, I wish I'd have taken part now.
Yeah, that was your own fault.
I had to sit there quietly. I was not best pleased. I think I failed as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
There may or may not be footage of you saying something or dropping things and making noise, yes.
My foot being in the picture every now and again because I'm sat ever just like to do the other side. We're a well-oiled machine here, you know what I mean?
Oh yes, terribly professional, don't you know? But it was your idea, Dave, that we got talking about with gaming. Like, do you want to lead us in?
Oh, go on then. Basically, the idea I had, Helen, and Mark, was for what kind of stories can the player tell through a video game medium? Because I came up with the idea because I had started playing The Sims a bit more, and I'd started doing a challenge, and I'd found out that you go on I can't remember the name of the website right now. The one I use, I think it's. Hold on, I've got it saved. If you'll bear with me, because I get all my mods there. But I mean, it's like My Sims Community or something. Hold on, let me find it. Bear with me. This would be terribly boring.
You can tell we're well prepared for this, can't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, in fairness, The Sims. One of the things I talked about with Dave was, did you ever play with The Sims 2, Helen? Did you ever play where you could write in the story of the neighborhood?
Yes, I've actually recently downloaded The Sims 3 for the first time because I'm on an RP site and I decided I have no idea what the layout of my character's house looks like. Let's fix that. So I kind of went down the Sims rabbit hole. But yeah, there's the option there to fill in all of the story and not only the character backgrounds, but I think like the neighborhood and the house as well.
I'd never have thought of using Sims for that purpose. Working out a character's house. That's genius. I like that.
That's a clever idea. I've dropped the link for the website in the private chat, Martin, if you want to figure out a way to put that somewhere. I don't know.
I'm sure we can.
The Legacy Challenge. It's simslegacychallenge.com. And the idea behind that is basically you can start with a sim family or a single sim, and you've got to build, their legacy. And through that medium, there you go, you can create a story. And that got me thinking, what other games can you use the actual game mechanics without tinkering or changing anything to tell a cohesive story that you could then either write into fiction yourself or blog about or post about on Tumblr or whatever. And that's kind of where the conversation started.
I suppose that's quite similar to the Pokemon Nuzlocke challenge as well, in that you're taking the base game, but you're imposing a couple of limitations on yourself. So if a Pokemon faints, it's dead. Box it or release it. You have to nickname them all, usually, because it makes you more emotionally attached.
Yep.
No healing items. You can only heal in Pokemon centers, and you have to catch the first Pokemon you find in each route. So you can't go waiting and to get like a special like creature rather than like a Rattata or something.
Wasn't the only exception to that rule is unless you've already got one of those Pokemon?
Yes, well, that's
Or-
house rules one, I think. There's a few different variants of Nuzlocke one, but they're the general like base rules that you'll follow. And again, not modifying the game at all. It's just literally going imposing a challenge. And a lot of people have then, of course, made Nuzlocke comics, where they've obviously fleshed out the characters and the Pokemon themselves, and generally just try and break the reader's hearts because if it's a Nuzlocke, it's going to involve a lot of death.
I watched. I think it was. I know it was Team 4-Star. I'm trying to remember which one they did. I watched the entire Nuzlocke up to that point that they had out. I think it was Leaf Green, and the amount of just sorrow, genuine sorrow, from these free-grown men as their Pokemon died in a gym battle, and it was just like, no, it was genuinely engaging.
But I mean, I like, because I don't know about you, Helen. I know Dave doesn't particularly sort of watch YouTubers or any streamers or what have you, but I like a lot of what Many a True Nerd does on YouTube, where he'll do like challenge runs or various different things. So with Fallout New Vegas or 3, I forget what it was, he did a level 1 naked survival run. So literally the character has to be absolutely level 1, no special abilities, just plain bog standard, as simple as possible. And from there, it's a case of, well, what happens. And it makes for some really interesting storytelling when you limit yourself. He did a Skyrim run where, if I remember rightly, the one thing that couldn't happen is he couldn't be he didn't allow himself to use archers at all, use any bows or projectile weapons, which made for a really interesting game mechanic. And it was fascinating to watch, like the story that unfolded that way. He had this whole thing where Benor, which is one of the companions in the game, Benor just became this sort of, it became the husband, and then Benor died, and he sort of resurrected Benor through the sort of necromancy magic. It was like, you can make some really interesting things with different games.
And you've got like, I mean, you can do it with multiple different games. Obviously, The Sims is just kind of like tailor-made for making stories, obviously, but it's very much small-scale ones. I think like they're more like, if you think about it, you could use The Sims to tell a massive, like anything from like a overblown family drama, or even a soap opera. To be quite honest, if you really wanted to go for it, because obviously you can't actually, you personally, you cannot make your sim kill another sim. But obviously, if you're playing God, you can go, yes, this. Sorry, guys. It's not Rona, it's hay fever.
Put your sim into a pool and take out the ladders. It's as simple as that.
Roaring very, Martin. I see your
okay
in the pool and I raise you fire.
Yeah, take away the doors from the kitchen, take away the smoke alarm, and take away the sink.
Yeah.
Or if you want to be particularly, gross and morbid and feel the power of life draining away in front of you, you can leave the fire alarm on and have the firefighter outside desperately trying to get him. I've never done that. I'm not that
Clearly.
No, I did once lock. This is going away from storytelling, but I was trying to get a haunted house in Sims 2. I did this, and it was one of the nice big built-up ones, and it was pre-made family went, I don't want you in this house. I want you to be ghosts. I don't want you to be playable characters. So I locked one of them on the landing. It's quite gross for me, to be quite fair, because it was a husband and wife, young husband and wife Sims. Husband's on the balcony on one side, wife is on the balcony on the other side, and they slowly die. And they can see each other the entire time.
Do characters in your stories, Dave, or the writing you make, die frequently by any chance?
No, funnily enough, the writing that I do of my actual fiction is a lot more happy. if I were to put up the links to my fix, which I am not going to, a lot of it is slice of life romantic comedy. And then in my games, I'm a murderous, vengeful god.
So, what about you, Helen? Do you have anything? So, any games that you think are great for the storytelling aspect of them all?
For individual storytelling, for storytelling in general, I always go default to BioWare, but they do have, as much as there are choices you can make in those games, they still do have pretty much a set storyline that you have to follow eventually. Though they are very good inspiration for various fan fictions and AUs and what have you. As for games themselves, the ones I dabble in is probably, Pokemon, because again, it's a set storyline, but because these Pokemon games are so relatively simplistic in story, probably bar Gen 5, because Jesus Christ, they do open up, which are challenges like the Nuzlocke, they do open up a much different aspect of the game that you probably might not have considered before, and that does lend itself to a lot of different writings and story ideas and what have you. There's something similar, I suppose, though, was I've not played it myself, but Halo leading to Red versus Blue by Rooster Teeth, which again, they simply, for the early days anyway, took the Halo engine, used the rather limited, I suppose, animations that were available to them, bit of voiceover, and they were able to make initially just like a few comedy sketches, but as they became more well-known, better funding, they were able to build like a full-on story and plot with basically just the game animations, and then as they got a bit better off, a bit of animation and stuff like that. But yeah.
I mean, when Dave and I talked about creating, or sort of talking about something like this, one of the things that crossed my mind instantly when he was talking about it was machinima. Like, machinima used to be this really big thing where you do, well, I suppose Red versus Blue is essentially machinima, isn't it? It's using a game engine to create a story or something.
Yeah.
But machinima seems to have disappeared, and I don't necessarily understand why, or am I just missing the fact it's out there somewhere?
No, I've not seen it for a long time. To the point I kind of forgot it existed.
Yeah, I did too. When he brought it up to me, I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Well, we've got a view of something there, which I think Martin's going to build later.
Well, no, what I was going to say is, I mean, for me, it's one of these, like, so I saw a machinima years ago, and this is, what we're watching is the server that I have at the moment with my brother and sister. We started off arriving in this little place and building, a nice little Viking village. But the weird thing is, we developed, as we were going along, this kind of big story where every building here has its purpose and everything. Yeah, we may have got carried away a bit in what we were doing and what we were creating. It's it's something, but like a game like this, like I can tell you what every single one of these houses, what every single one of those buildings means, because Minecraft, again, it's this weird thing of being able to show you exactly, or you're able to do whatever you want with it, so you can create this story. I've done with somebody else like a reach 1 million challenge, and following the story as two of us are trying to survive against an environment to get to a certain set of coordinates is quite like a story naturally evolves to do that.
I mean, there's one that I completely forgot I'd actually started playing because I don't know why I forgot, which is Ark Survival. One of my friends, Gray, who you know, Dave,
yes.
He and Hannah got us into the game. We've not done much story-wise with it yet, but again, it's the potential there where, yes, it's technically a survival game, but it's also, you've got to build your way up from literally, you've got cloth rags on and you need to chop down trees to make anything out of either thatch or timber. But you can eventually level up to like sci-fi level stuff. As you gain more experience, gain higher levels, you can learn to make better items with the engrams. So again, you can literally, if you put enough time into that, you could make your own village, your own city. There's very limited character customization, and you'd have to do a kind of Halo Red versus Blue type thing where you're doing all the voiceovers, the acting, and the characters and stuff if you were going to go for a story idea. But it certainly is possible to do so with that engine, I reckon. Also, you get to ride dinosaurs and saber-toothed cats and all that. Like, so, what's not to like?
Well, I mean, there are some. Go on, Dave. Go on.
Gray did, in fact, tell me a little bit about Ark because I was bemoaning that I didn't have anybody to really play online games with. That's why I got Monster Hunter in the first place, really, but it wasn't really for me, unfortunately. But he said that you guys had gotten to Ark, and he was, in true Gray fashion, trying to get me to get another convert to a game he wants to play.
Yeah, you know what he's like.
But which is fine because it normally leads to good games. But no, I had heard of it, and isn't there something like about you can get dinosaurs?
Yes, basically it's a mix of survival and tame your own monster. Basically, if Pokemon were all trying to kill you, put it that way. So you start off. Basically, you dropped in at a random point on the map. We ended up on a beach of like a little island, actually. I was promptly killed by a level 107 Carnotaurus that appeared out of nowhere.
Ooh!
It took me and Jay about 5 or 6 attempts to actually stay alive for a while because we just kept getting ambushed by Carnotaurs or T-Rex or things that Gray was basically insisting, oh no, you know, we're on like I don't know what the map was called in particular, but he said, oh no, you should be able to get those levels here. I'm like, Gray, we've just been murdered by 3 of them. Can you stop telling us what's not meant to be happening when it is?
Yeah. Again, you're taking that as a challenge. Please stop.
Yes, basically. But you dropped in and you've got to either keep yourself alive. You've got various stats. So you've got your energy, water, food, rest. Is that energy as well? And you've got to then obviously keep yourself fed. So you need to hunt things to eat or spam a load of berries, but they aren't very filling at all. So go get some meat. And you can, I think you either start off, you have to make a very basic axe or pickaxe that you can then obviously start making things with.
Like every other survival game in the world.
Ever. Yes.
That's the bloody first axe you have to make.
Yeah. But in the meantime, obviously, all these dinos that are roaming around, and I don't know if what's key to just the base game and which are some of the expansions that Gray's got us on. I'm not sure which, but you also get things like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, other prehistoric creatures, and a few techno ones as well. So we've got like techno parasaurus running around. Once you get to a certain point in unlocking what's called engrams, which allows you to basically the blueprints. Once you are able to make narcotics, you can then use them to tranquilize the creatures. And if you then basically tranquilize them and you fill their inventories full of food, and that basically helps to tame them. And then once they've tamed, you can then ride round on them. Once you've made a saddle, you have to make everything in this game. So ride them, they will fight for you. So if something attacks you, they will get mobbed by your pack of dinosaurs that are following you around. You can mount flyers, so you can go flying around the sky.
It sounds like an extremely like higher tech, higher res version of Minecraft. I mean, I dipped my toe in very early, like when it was way before release, you know, like early access kind of thing, rather than before it was thing. And like I didn't give it as much time as I like, but it does sound like it's a grown up version of Minecraft.
Essentially, I'm assuming. I've not played Minecraft myself, but yeah, I'd imagine so. Just with the more, you know, jump scares, going to die aspects.
I mean, I don't think it. I wonder, having not played both, I probably will get around to giving Ark a go, more out of curiosity than anything. But I suspect that the jump scares are probably about similar to when a creeper just randomly appears next to your perfectly.
Yeah, they're not scripted jump scares or anything. It's just literally sometimes you'll be walking along, cutting down a tree or hunting a dodo, whatever, and then you'll just hear the music kick and you'll turn around and you've got something chasing you. So they're not massive jump scares or scripted like you would get in a horror movie, but sometimes it can be like there was a point where me and Jay were playing on the same 2 screens in the same room, because it's all online, you can't do split screen, and he needed to quench his thirst, so we went into the water. You can drink the sea in this, by the way. Apparently salt water doesn't kill you in this. Went into the sea, and I just glanced at his screen, and there's a megalodon right in front of him. So I'm just literally yelling down. I'm like, "That's a shark! That's a shark!" Has to bail out the water. So that's the kind of jump scare you can get where it's completely random and it's not scripted, but it can just happen organically sometimes because the game will have loaded a megalodon about 15 feet away from you.
Yeah, and obviously that would lend itself quite brilliantly to certain type of storytelling, which you could then, well, okay, this is what happened. Let's add a little bit of nuance to what's actually being said in dialogue, shall we say? Because that's what we were saying. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that would be always my issue of like games like Ark or Minecraft is that obviously it's much more of a build, and you are the player, so you're the one who would really in the world. You're playing through an avatar rather than playing a character.
It's one of them where, it's a game where if you were to make any story content from it, you would have to do the full work because there's no story mode as such. It is just free reign, go and explore, try not to die. So any story content would come solely from what you decide to make of it.
But isn't that the point of sandbox games, though? It's like, when you're playing SimCity, or when I'm playing SimCity, on occasion, I will do especially like, so SimCity 4, I think it was, you had this big grid where you could have loads of interconnected cities. I would always have the dump city, the city I didn't care about. And it was just, that's where all the industry is. That's where all the garbage dumps are and what have you. And, that's the bit I don't care about. And we're going to hide this and have lovely, pretty places everywhere else because you set your own limits, don't you? The server I've got here on Minecraft, that one actually has now been switched over to creative because my sister and my brother and I have decided we're going to create a new world that links to the old world where we've got we've got no rules in one of them, and the other one we've got every single rule possible. So it's as hard as absolutely possible because you set your own rules, you set your own story in sandbox games. I think that's that's the point of sandbox games, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I mean, the fun thing for games like that is that you do generally, within the rules of the game, well, no rules in case of your server, you can tell whatever story you want. And even if the only person who sees the story is you as you play it out, there will still be a story and you can still do that for your own amusement. But that's what I'm doing with The Sims, basically. The only other person I'm telling really about what happens with each new challenge that I complete within the game is my friend Kate, who is the person who told me about the challenges in the first place. But it's quite interesting what you can do with certain game engines. Like, I mean, Sims obviously is a simulation game. Any simulation game, obviously, you can be able to tell the story quite easily. It might not be as nuanced as sitting down and writing it, but you'll be able to do it all the same. But it gets a lot more interesting, I think, when you've got open world games that have got a linear story mode. Because when I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, as I believe so have you, Helen, you're on the DLC.
Excellent game, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, as much as most of my enjoyment from the game does come from Spartan kicking people off cliffs, because I'm a simple creature, but I have noticed that I do not really have to engage with the main story mode if I don't want to. There are other stories I can tell for myself, and if I wanted to, I could share it, especially with PS4. Don't know if it's the same with PC versions of it, but I imagine it's the same as Xbox One versions of the game. You can take photos while you're playing, you can live record and stream, and then you could tell an entire different story, much like a Let's Play, I'd imagine. I imagine that's how it works, but I wouldn't know. I've never looked into it. But of what you're doing. So say you wanted to go into Odyssey, and there's a big section about it just with bounty hunters, because you are playing a Mystios, I think it's called, which is, you're obviously a bounty hunter, and you've got a really stereotypical Assassin's Creed sort of name for your Mystios, but it makes sense. Eagle Bearer, really, in Assassin's Creed, you are Eagle Bearer. Okay. Bit on the nose, but whatever. But you could just tell a story through that function of you going around and becoming the top mercenary in all of Greece. Or you could just do a sailing tour of all the islands of Greece, which would be interesting, I'm sure, especially as you travel around with Herodotus.
Yes, I mean, Case in point was me and my family went to Greece a few years ago. We went to the Palace of Knossos, which is in the game. So cue me climbing around all the places that we walked around and going, Mom, Dad, look what I found on my game. Though one thing I should mention while we've got Assassin's Creed Odyssey is they have introduced a story creator mode, which is, if I'm quoting off the website, story creator mode is a quest creation tool that will allow you to create your own stories in the world of Assassin's Creed Odyssey and play stories created by other players. So it's available on all platforms, I believe, and all stories will be published and playable on all platforms. So you can make a story on PC, and a PS4 gamer can play it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Is that because on the main menu, is that the thing where it says you have to be signed in to an Ubisoft account? I think that's what it is. I booted it up, and I always ignore like Uplay or whatever it is because I'm like, I've paid my X amount of money for this game. I don't want to have to sign up to an account just to play the game I've already played for. What you're doing?
Yeah, here it is. It says, yes, you need an Ubisoft account and a copy of Assassin's Creed Odyssey to create and play stories, but you can browse the story creator mode website without them because it's got its own dedicated website for all the content filters and all that.
Because sorry, go on, Han.
No, go on. It was just basically, it's again, I've not played around with it myself much. But it's again, they've basically gone, our world, our game, it has a lot of potential for you to create your own stories in it. So why don't we let you?
Which makes sense because Baldur's Gate and I mean Neverwinter Nights was great with this. Like Neverwinter Nights had the Aurora tool set with it, which would allow you to create your own campaigns, your own stories. Essentially, you could create an entire new game inside that game. And there have been games on and off that have done this for years. Like, I mean, I'm a PC gamer mainly, so I guess that's why I dig into these things. There's Legend of Grimrock and like Heroes of Might and Magic. They all allowed you this map creators or I mean, Dungeon Keeper 2, going back as far as that, Dungeon Keeper 2 had its own map editor, so you could create your own scenarios or what have you. But I mean, it's encouraging to see something like Assassin's Creed as a franchise bringing that kind of tool set into the game because it's something maybe we've forgotten, like this ability to create this big, wide thing. Because let's be honest, there are games out there that don't have the best story modes or the best stories out there. They're like really entertaining to play, really engaging, but the story is absolutely dreadful. And you're like, well, okay, what do I do now? I've spent 40 quid on this thing and it's meh. But if it's got a tool set with it,
you can do all sorts. And I mean, a lot of that is because of a lot more companies are using third-party tool sets, which means they can't then give them out to people because it's licensing issues and all that. But it is nice to get a few more in-house ones that are actually giving us the ability to do that back. Because I know Skyrim is basically a game that you buy to mod the hell out of it.
You want to talk about modding Skyrim? We'd need John.
Oh, I know. But like I'm on PS4, and I think there is a way to mod PS4 ones, but I am not that tech savvy in any way. But the base game itself on Skyrim, I found it was the first Elder Scrolls game I played. I boosted it up, played through the main story, and about less than 2 days later, I'm sat there going, was that it? Because I didn't realise with Elder Scrolls games, you're meant to do all the side quests, the side journeys, So the second playthrough was a lot more engaging, fulfilling than the first one. But at the same time, I'm still sat there going, you've got this massive, massive game. And yet the world's beautiful, the generating new questing is a good idea, but if the main story itself and the characters aren't really that engaging, then the main draw is just going to be, I can run around the night and chase a butterfly for 3 hours. It's, so obviously the people have addressed that by using mods and making their own stories inside it, and that's obviously one of the heavy draws and benefits of that game. But at the same time, I'm sat there thinking, just like some of the creators, like, couldn't you have given us more meat on the story anyway?
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that one because, like, I've played Skyrim through multiple characters. I've never, and I do mean never, completed the story mode because I've just got engaged in doing what I want to do with everything else. Because I think it just you find your way where you're just like, okay, now maybe this is just because we're writers and we look for ways to tell stories because it's just second nature to us. I imagine it's not just us, but we would look at it this way. As I want a better story out of this game, so I'm going to make one.
But doesn't that in some way, I think, for me, it goes to show that you don't need to think of yourself as a writer sometimes in order to be able to create a story. I mean, some of the training helps and what have you, but the very fact that there are people out there who will mod the heck out of a game because they want to tell their own story within the game, that in and of itself is a case of they have ambition, they have that ability to tell a story as well. You don't have to be sat there writing away in order to create your story.
Exactly.
Sorry, I would actually argue that modders are storytellers.
Oh yeah.
But they're just their medium isn't the written word, but it's code. So it's like with The Sims is one of the other games which I think has got the most mods of
on the planet.
I don't know of any game, but like the most mods that I've ever come across personally. It's got a whole website. Like the game designers realized by about Sims 2, they're like, people are modding the hell out of this game. And they don't have the things that we've got, like, producers and executives who are telling us you can't put that in. Okay, let's just set up a whole community page for them to do it, and they can talk about it and make their own mods. And that has become a staple of the Sims franchise, all the way so that by Sims 4, there is a gallery mode where you can pick up other items that other people have made and put them in your worlds. And I think that's really, really interesting on how people have gone, right, okay, so I want this thing in this game, and I'm going to make it, which is, for me, the entire reason why I am a writer. Because I read something, I didn't see what I wanted in it, so I made it.
Yeah.
But I think it's really
cool. Fanfic.
Well, I mean, that is why I lived there 13 years on.
Yeah.
I think as well, like GTA, I think it was GTA 5 had like a director mode or something like that where you could, and like there are cinematic mode cameras and all this kind of stuff in games specifically so that you can, to enable you to tell the story you want to tell, I guess, if you are so inclined. I kind of think this is why game streamers have caught on so much with certain people. Like, you watch that, you're not just watching somebody playing a game with in my opinion, some of the better ones. When you're actually watching them, you're watching them tell a story. So there is, as I say, Miniature Nerd did this sort of survival mode kind of thing, or a Skyrim challenge where you're not allowed to use projectile weapons, so you're not allowed to use a bow and arrow, like that kind of thing. He did a Fallout 4 run that was a melee character only, like no guns, a no gun Fallout 4 run. Yeah.
See, I was thinking it's going to be a bit tough in Skyrim because you are reliant upon a bow, but in Fallout?
Yeah, honestly, it is fantastic. It really is fantastic to watch. But I've since then gone and tried to replicate that or do something similar and trying to work out, well, what, could I do that? Because that's quite an interesting thing. I think it goes to show why these things have taken off as forms that people watch, because these people are telling stories. During planning, I was telling Dave about the Yogscast. Somebody from the Yogscast did a Christmas adventure in Minecraft where every day the four of them turned up to do a challenge. Again, they're telling stories, and over the time, characters develop and that kind of thing. And there's a reason that form took off. And I genuinely think it's because of how games allow us to tell stories. Maybe that's just my perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's fair. And forgive me, I've just realised where it's come from, really. What it's very, very similar to, at least. It's very similar to how you tell a collaborative story through tabletop role-playing games like D&D. Yeah. And the more you play it, the more nuanced your characters. I think that's why, despite the fact that I cannot for the life of me get into it, people like Critical Role has become so popular. It's because you're not because we're playing D&D, because unless you personally don't have the time to do it, which is fine, you can learn how to play D&D on your own with mates. But watching these very, very talented, I think it's all of them voice actors. So no Matthew Mercer is.
I think a few of them are, but I don't know about all of them.
Yeah, I know a healthy dose of them are voice actors.
Or voice actors, yeah.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that Matt Mercer is, because even I know he's one of the people from. I think he's not Tracer. He's somebody from Overwatch. He's the High Noon
Matt
guy.
Mercer's one of the very, very prolific voice actors. So if you hear an anime, he's probably in it.
Yeah,
a game, probably in it.
A bit like Nolan North and anything that involves voice acting. He's probably in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's why people, because it's a story. You're telling a story through that, and then Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter, for example, and then Elder Scrolls as well. You are essentially playing a D&D game, but you're the only main character.
So at this point, I'll go, you started talking about this. At the moment, I got rid of this off the screen ready to share. But this is the Neverwinter Nights toolkit. This is the Aurora engine. For somebody who's played D&D, this is not exactly unfamiliar to some games. A lot of D&D games will go without the maps entirely. But in this one, we've got a map, and we've got the ability to drop down. Okay, I'm going to drop down a Beholder Mage over here, and what have you.
You demon.
If you want to, you can drop down whatever you want. And the environment, if you want to build a new area, well, that's easy enough to do. And I think that's, we could build, let's say, here we are, city exterior. And all of a sudden we have yet another map, and we have created, we've created another part of the game. And I think that's, like, again, it goes to show the whole D&D connection.
Well, no, I mean, in fact, I've been playing, obviously with the lockdown, I've been playing my D&D games on Roll20. And yeah, it looks very much like that, because of the maps that we're using are, they look very much like Neverwinter by the looks of it. I mean, I suspect they're a little bit different. I think he's probably our DM has pulled them from the rule book or the campaign book or something. I'm not sure, I've not asked. But yeah, no, it definitely looks very similar. And I think that's where a lot of our, where the idea came from, because obviously a lot of people who like video games, who've got the time, also like D&D, because it's more games you can play, and it makes a logical jump for me, where like the more that D&D becomes more and more popular, because it's definitely becoming more popular, especially now of correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but now that there's a lot of people in Hollywood who are seen as like cool, coming out and playing, saying, I play D&D. Like, there's a guy, I do not know his name, but he's in How I Met Your Mother as a character called Brad, and he's a very, very attractive man. He's also a massive Dungeons and Dragons nerd.
I mean, it's not surprising though. Like, as an actor, it's one of those things that I keep bumping into people who are gamers, or they are storytellers in some way, shape, or form. And my thinking is, part of it is about communication. For an actor's job is to communicate something one way or another, whether it's through voice, through physicality, through whatever. Our job is communicating. The same is true of directors. So by exploring things like gaming, by exploring things like writing or whatever else, it's just building that communication skill set. So it doesn't surprise me that there are entertainers out there that are very into D&D, because again, it's another way of communicating. It's another way of, creating character as well. It's a key thing.
And I think as well, it's probably something that's always been popular with those people, but it's only now that it's becoming mainstream because they've been public about liking it. So things like Critical Role have basically made it, again, it's like it's become popular. It's like, I don't know, Star Wars made space stories popular, like in the mainstream, rather than just being a sci-fi niche.
Yeah.
Same thing with Harry Potter and fantasy and or magic-based stories. because they've always been very popular within their audiences, but it usually takes something groundbreaking, whether that's for quality or not, to make it mainstream popular, and which that's when it starts becoming then like a not even a cult thing, but it's then it's just accepted. It's every day. It's like, oh yeah, of course they watch Game of Thrones. It's it's not it's not a nerdy thing anymore. It's just what's popular. And
True.
I think Game of Thrones is a good example of that, where, say, when it was first being written, that would solely be, oh, it's a fantasy series. You only go towards that if you like high fantasy kind of thing.
And other things.
It got to like 10 years ago, and oh, look, the TV series is coming out, and everyone's raving about it.
And then it's also reached such a high point of osmosis that for a good solid, I think, 3-4 months after the ending, people were still complaining about the last season.
Yes, although I noticed as well, I sort of posted about this on Tumblr somewhere, is that the last season seemed to be so bad that it essentially dissolves all the cultural impact it had up until that point.
Yeah,
People aren't talking about it anymore unless it's to complain about it.
yeah, it's gone from the cultural narrative because of just how badly it ends, which is.
But hang on, is that not? I mean, my brain goes into overdrive sometimes, and while Helen's been talking, I've got an idea for another subject down the line. I won't talk off now, but with Game of Thrones in particular, one of the things I found really annoying is that we're going to seed this idea, we're seeding this idea, we're seeding this idea, we're seeding this idea. They're putting down the plant, but there's never any freaking payoff. And
and that's because I think the writers have even came out and said, "Oh, people were guessing what we were going to do, so we changed it."
Yeah,
there's a very good pair of video essays by Lindsay Ellis.
Yes,
have you seen them? Yeah,
I've heard, I think so,
yeah. Where basically she takes a good old, well-deserved dig into the the floating ribs of both of the writers of going themes are for eighth grade book reports or something like that. I'm just like, no, themes are for good writers. Get out of my script, please. And she just goes on about it. It's just like how the twists were, oh, well, you weren't expecting it. A well-written twist will be seen coming. That is not a problem. It just means your audience is paying attention. You're doing your job properly.
Yeah, you are being a good writer. If your audience have guessed where you're going, you've been a decent writer.
And you get more excited as well, because if once you finally get that payoff of, yes, I was right, you're more invested in the story. Whereas if you're thinking, oh, they're doing this, doing this, what on earth's that? Yeah. You don't have that same investment because you feel like, well, that makes no sense.
No.
So then you feel jarred out of the story.
Yeah. It's the same thing with I'm putting on my proper. I went to uni, don't you know, kind of talk now, but it's like with Alfred Hitchcock and his talk on suspense and how the beauty of suspense that helps with rewatching and revisiting a film is you give the audience that power and you let them know what's going to happen, but you don't let the people in the story know. So the anxiety of your audience is building and building and building and building and building and building, and then boom, the twist comes and they know it's coming. The twist isn't for them, it's for the characters. However, the inverse of a really bad twist would be you make a real big show about how there's a bomb underneath one person in a circle of seats chair, and you keep pointing out that this bomb is ticking down, it's ticking down, ticking down, ticking down. And then the final twist is, before the bomb goes off, somebody in clown makeup jumps out and stabs somebody. Now, that's not a bad twist, but it's not got resaleability, because the next time you watch that film, you're just waiting for the clown. There's no anxiety, there's no tension. It's just, you wait, okay, the clown's coming.
Well, it's what you and I, Dave, talked about. I forget whether it was in one of these writer talks or whether it was as an aside, private thing. Incidentally, I got it wrong. Sherlock Holmes doesn't use deductive reasoning. He uses inductive reasoning. But the general point held in that, like, the reason I have an issue with Sherlock as a TV show is it's just like a good detective mystery. The audience should be able to take a reasonable guess at who it is who has committed the crime. If they can't, you've not been a clever writer. You've just done a twist for a twist's sake, or you've intentionally withheld information, and that always feels like a cheap cop-out way of handling the story. Maybe that's just me.
It's based. I think it's also as well with characters like Sherlock, where they're meant to be these extremely intelligent characters, to the point where they're probably meant to be more intelligent than the writers. That's probably a writer's shortcut of making them look smart when they themselves can't really figure it out.
But is it not more wholesome for the audience to be able to, like, as an audience member, and or as somebody selling a product, wouldn't you want your audience member to feel smart? Because
exactly.
So with that, you want to see the clues in there enough that your audience could pick up on those clues and go, well, now I was right all along, and therefore I know what's going on. I'm as smart as Sherlock Holmes is. Isn't that great? Like,
yeah.
Rather
but then
than
you've got, yeah. Go on.
Rather than doing the BBC version of going, no, actually it's this thing, and you had no reasonable way of coming to that conclusion.
Yeah. It's just, it's the same thing that Game of Thrones did, really, is that they've both basically gone, oh, we can't resolve it this way, whether it's because the fandom's guessed, or, oh, I don't think I can actually work that out myself. So rather than coming up with something that they could plausibly work out, they just go, oh, we'll just do this instead. But it's the same base problem of that the writers, for whatever reason, aren't up to the task of fulfilling the payoff. With Game of Thrones, it was more, oh, we just want shock value. That's literally what it boiled down to, it seems. And also the writers didn't seem to care by the end of it. They just literally wanted to drop it, move on to Star Wars, and have their new toy. Except now they're not doing Star Wars anymore because they've been dropped from that.
So to redirect back to games then.
Yes, because we got a bit sidetracked there.
Yes. Yeah. But is this what happened with Mass Effect 3?
Oh, that's a can of worms.
Well, it is, but here's the thing: we've seen by Mass Effect 3, we've seen Shepard be killed brutally in one of the best openings to a game I've ever seen in Mass Effect 2. Yeah. You've spent the entire of one game completely invested in him, and then or her, and then Shepard is just unceremoniously killed. And then they're back to life. But you are so invested in that character, and there is no way to have that character survive at the end. You make all of these choices throughout the first two games, and even to some extent the third game, but you are so limited by the choices in Mass Effect 3 that however you've invested, you still feel like, I mean, I as a first time I played Mass Effect 3, I as a player felt like I've done something wrong. How do I fix it?
You feel like you've got the bad ending.
Yeah.
But it's the only ending. And it's again, there was a lot of stuff going on at BioWare at the time. I think there's the book Pixel, Sweat and Tears. I'd have to get the author up a second.
I can do that. Yeah, give mine a minute.
Yeah. Blood and Sweat and Pixels, sorry, which is by Jason Schreier.
Yep.
If I pronounced that correctly. Basically documents, he looked more at Inquisition, to be fair, but Mass Effect 3 did get a few mentions, I believe, of how there was so much nonsense going on at the company with production changes and crunch, where basically the teams did what they could. They did the best they could, but they were severely hampered by a lot of the executive changes and meddling. And I think with the Mass Effect 3 ending in particular, because the book focuses more on Inquisition, it's like they didn't know how to end it satisfactorily. So they went, well, we need to give them some options because we're known for giving them options, but we can't have these wildly different endings. We don't have the budget to do wildly different endings. So let's just do something that's very, very similar. You still get the illusion of choice, but then we can still use a lot of the same slides and just put a different filter on them or a different color blast, all this stuff. So it's like, whether they ran out of time, ran out of budget, I'm sure the individual people who made the game all put their best effort into it because that's what you do in the game industry. it's never the fault of the individual people. It's never down to laziness because they work so hard, but they are often massively, massively crippled by the choices the higher ups have made.
Yeah,
Which I suspect is what happened with Mass Effect 3.
probably.
I mean,
yeah.
that's where. But that said, I don't think that absolves everything. I mean, a game that was in development hell for years was BioShock Infinite.
Yeah.
Like that went through so many different changes. By whatever estimation you have it, that game went through a lot of changes, and it did the whole thing of pretending to give you a choice. But like, there's a moment in the game where you're asked to pick between one brooch and another for Elizabeth, and that choice means absolutely nothing. There's never any payoff for it. You spend the entire game wondering what the payoff is going to be. But actually, despite that, I still kind of felt, I didn't feel like the end felt unjustified. I felt that the end worked for what it is. I mean, that's my opinion. So I don't think development hell can explain away everything.
Oh no,
Maybe
certainly can't.
Yeah.
No, I think the trick behind why it works in BioShock though is because the story is better. To be honest, because in BioShock Infinite, the whole idea of illusion of choice leading you down to the very last choice that Booker DeWitt can really make. He's got two choices to make. I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't played the game yet, because nice.
It's an ancient game.
I still haven't played it.
Exactly.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, just because you and I play every game we watch so much. I think this is the problem we have, Martin. You and I play a lot of the same games, and we know the endings because we both complete them. But so on and so forth. But I think that's the problem with some games where we do have storytelling, and I think this is what, as we've said, with Helen, like with Skyrim going, is that it? Is what inspires people to start using the game engine to tell their own stories. Is that they've got a brilliant idea and very bad payoff. Like with there was a game that I played recently which had a really, really good story, and I got to the end and I was like, really? Is that it? I think it might have been one of the Fable games. I think it was Fable 3, where in the end you're king, and it's just you do everything, you beat everything, and the world kind of feels kind of pointless. So, but it's built as a big open world game that you can do anything with when you first get it. But you can't.
I mean, there's a wonderful game that I came through watching a certain Xbox related show on YouTube called Kingdoms of Amalur, and it is actually a legitimately good game with that, albeit it's quite buggy, but you have the ability constantly to change your fate throughout it, to change who you are, what you're doing, and it allows to give you that kind of feel of different things. I think you're right though. Like that's why modding exists.
Yeah, but I have thought
of
fan fiction, definitely fan fiction. I think fan fiction exists because people read stories that went, nah, I don't like that.
Literally, but again, going back to Mass Effect 3, look at the influx of fix that started after that game released, basically fixing the ending. And even the whole indoctrination theory, which took off massively, where the theory being that for the entire game, virtually Shepard's succumbing to indoctrination via the Reapers. So the entire ending is basically them trying to trick Shepard into picking an option that benefits the Reapers.
Yeah.
There are a few flaws with the theory. I won't say it's, that it's perfect, but a lot of people bought into it because it was better than the ending they got, and it made more thematic sense for the game after the whole payoff of 3 games where we're constantly being warned, oh, they indoctrinate you. We don't feel anything.
No.
So that's why a lot of people bought into it, and other various fan fictions that people wrote because they just didn't agree with the ending, because it's an ending where you can't really win. No matter which one you pick, you're not going to be happy with everything. And yet you could say that's like a morally grey one, it's Pyrrhic victory, it's, But at the same time, when you've put that much effort into a game across 3 games and all the DLC, put hundreds of hours into the game, you kind of want an ending where you feel like you've actually won.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I've only played through Mass Effect 3 once. and I think that's why. Because I got to the ending, and the ending I got to choose was where Shepard sacrifices himself and disintegrates into that big massive thing.
Yeah.
And then you get the cut of the crew. And in my playthrough, I think it was Tali and Garrus, maybe. But Tali had been my Shepard's partner.
Yeah.
And it's just them coming out of like what looks like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I remember they're going, really?
What color was your green? Was your flash? What color was your big boom?
Oh, I honestly don't remember. I think it might have been green.
Yeah, so basically you picked synthesis, if that's the case, where everything's merged. They all start getting a little green light in the skin because suddenly Reapers and people and organics are the same.
Yeah.
Then you've got the destruction ending, which is no, screw the Reapers, you're all dying, which has been the plan from day one.
Yeah, we'll go with us.
Up, but it also takes out Edie, who is your AI crew member. And then there's control, which is where you basically become the Reapers hive mind. You control the Reapers. So the Reapers are still around, but they're helping rebuild. Look at them. They're nice now.
Yeah. They've totally not indoctrinated me.
Yeah.
See, this is where I just prefer my headcanon to think that maybe Mass Effect 3 is the story of the entire universe being or the entire of that galaxy being destroyed, and I mean, unfortunately, that starts to fall apart when you consider Mass Effect Andromeda, because that's the other option. But I like the idea that, forget what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda, although I don't think that's a bad story necessarily.
It was, and I think it suffered mostly from being a Mass Effect game. People were comparing that one standalone game to the trilogy with massively beloved characters and story, and people are so invested. And then you've got a completely new crew, new people, new player character who no one cares about yet. And you're going to struggle to get people as invested in that crew and characters in a single game compared to the investment you had across 3 games for the old crew. Automatically, people are going to be comparing it to the original trilogy, and it's going to be compared badly because there's not that investment there.
Well, it's like you were saying earlier, Helen, about what the future for the Dragon Age games could be, because they've built up a fondness and a knowledge of the Inquisitor in Inquisition, and as you said yourself, would the fight, is it Solus or Solaris or
Solus?
Solus
is basically he's now he was your companion. Big reveal again. I probably shouldn't spoil it, like with Bioshock, but basically they've come out and said that Inquisition, the game we got, was technically only the first half of the game they were planning on delivering to us.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are now going, well, we are now going to get Inquisition Part 2 with Game 4 as and when it comes out in the future. But because that storyline is basically cut in the middle, people are now going, well, it doesn't make sense to do what Dragon Age games have done thus far and give us a new protagonist when the story isn't finished. It's not like in the end of Origins where everything was wrapped up and, you're a hero, it's the big fight's over. Or with 2, where, again, it was a small insular community that you've spent 10 years in, and then at the end, that had to end. Inquisition still basically, yes, it's wrapped up its own little plot line, but the overarching story is massively connected to the Inquisitor and those cast of characters. So they would hit the same problem Andromeda hit if they were to give us just a new protagonist and not bring the Inquisitor back in some respect, because you're going to be sat there going, well, what does this new character have to do with Solus? Why would they care about him? Why would they know what's even going on? So that's why a lot of people are hoping they will bring back the Inquisitor as a protagonist or as the dual protagonist with a new one, to keep that same investment in the story and the character going forwards, particularly seeing as he was a romance option for a lot of characters. So a lot of players are going to be invested in that because of the whole tragic romance aspect. It gives it that extra kind of draw.
Which, of course, is another type of storytelling you can do in these games. You can do a lot of. I think that's part of the reason why a load of those games are so popular, like the BioWare really do like the interpersonal relationships quite well, I think. Because
Very well.
correct me on this one if I'm wrong, but I think even the Knights of the Old Republic games is from BioWare.
Yes.
Early BioWare.
Yes.
But I do vividly remember that my favorite part of those games, outside of yay lightsabers, was the dynamics you could do, and you could have, like, I remember quite vividly the various different playthroughs I did on those games, because that's how strong the narratives were. And maybe that's just because I'm a massive Star Wars nerd, but I do think it's quite telling that we're getting more story-based video games, and they have more sticking power. Because I don't know about you guys, but I went through a phase where I played a lot of first-person shooters, and there's no character.
No
character.
Yeah.
And it's not as fun, say, as Skyrim, where you at least get to make your own kind of character, or
Metal Gear Solid.
or any of the games where there's loads of
Doom, any of these kind of for FPS, you're quite limited into what. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't stories in them, but yeah, you're limited in what your personal choice is, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's very telling that we get more and more as we get further into how much we can play with games and technology we can use them for. We get more ability to tinker with the story ourselves and tell our own stories.
Yeah, definitely.